Good afternoon, everybody. We got a couple minutes to go here. Hope everybody's doing well. Let me open up a couple of items here.
My camera is acting up. Can you all hear me? I'm at my
I can
microphone.
hear you.
Okay, thank you.
All
I was just
right, I've
checking.
got 6 o'clock. Let's get started. Hopefully not going to be a real long night, but it always takes a while. All right, stars of the week. Let's see who caught my eye this week. Let's see, is Mary with us? I don't know. This is from both places. So Mary said on the intervention, remember we were working on intervention in IEP this week. Mary said teachers cannot refer students for intervention the first 9 weeks. Anybody know why you can't refer at the beginning of the year? You can't refer a student the first 9 weeks. Let me mute. Okay, just unmute yourself. Anybody know why we can't refer students for intervention the first 9 weeks?
You don't have enough data collected at that point in time.
I like working with smart people. Got to do your anecdotals, right? Just like EC. That's why you've heard me say you have to treat this the same as exceptional children. Even though it's not federal, it's state, but the same rules apply. That's where principals fall off the cliff. They think, oh, it's just a local thing. We can do whatever we want to, or we'll just catch his cat. No, it's the same rules as exceptional children, and the penalties are just the same. It's a school-based committee. Same thing. You can't refer a kid for EC without anecdotals, without information. Can't do that for intervention. You'll be amazed how many teachers the first week of school will start filing intervention reports on kids first week of school. Can't do that. You got to make sure that everybody understands. It's your job as principal to make sure everybody understands. One state, one's federal, but the rules are the same. You know, got it. Whatever we have to do that. Let's see. Robin turned in her competency folio this week. Very good, Robin. Good job on that. Becca, what was it? She had a picture. Where's Becca? I saw her a minute ago. Y'all scrambled and moved around again. There she is. She presented her revised schedule at their summer conference. And that's an excellent artifact. She had a real nice picture of that. That's an excellent artifact, but that's a good job. Sparkle reminded us that IEP is a legal document. I know that everybody understands that, but sometimes they don't. That again goes back to what I was talking about a minute ago. You got to remember to remind your teachers this stuff's not just a good idea or best practices. It's either state law on intervention or federal law on these IEPs. It's not something that you can ignore. We have to follow these things. Leanne reminded us that progress monitoring and intervention, again, same as IAP, same as federal, you got to do that. Too many people just write them and walk away from them, or don't bother to keep up. Melissa had a really good Title IX protocol from her district. If you want to read a real good one, I like the way they laid it out, and it was very clear in what all the responsibilities were. Keisha pointed out that on cyberbullying, which is this week's one on cyberbullying, that when a parent reports a problem with cyberbullying to the school, that does affect the school environment. So yes, you have to deal with it. I have people who say, well, if it didn't happen at school, if a parent brought it to you, you better deal with it. That affects your school environment. Don't cop out and say, well, it didn't happen at school, or we don't know where it happened. If they brought it to you, then you've got to deal with it. Robin was first to the task stream with the OMA. Good job. Everybody seems to be progressing well on that. I like what Brenda said is in her district, when there's a report of sexual harassment or sexual misconduct, school has to review its procedures to make sure they're handling things well. That's a good catch, Brenda. I like that. You know, don't act like, well, you know, it is what it is. It happened. And then next time, you know, we drop the ball again and again and again. What's the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over again, expect a different result. When you get these reports, you need to review your process to make sure that you're doing everything you can to prevent those things from happening. The little things become the big things. Are we supervising appropriately? Are we leaving doors unlocked where kids can slip off, you know, together, willingly at first and maybe not so willingly later? So make sure that, you know, you have to review your own protocols. Heather said that in her district, that the school, they have a school resource officer and tech IT person who assists them with these kind of investigations that are dedicated to do that. That's great. I mean, they already know, you know, we need the police for the power of subpoena and the IT person to go and get it. There you go. Their district has already got themselves set up to do that. Heather, talk to us about that a minute. I think that's absolutely marvelous. I wish I'd have been that smart years ago.
We've actually had that incident quite a few times this year. And we've had to confiscate laptops or devices, whether it's the laptop or the iPads that they have. And, you know, we give them the chance to come clean. And it's not so much of a severe punishment, but at the same time, they have to understand their consequences. You know, those rules are set in place for a reason. So, but our SRO, he's on top of it. You say you do it, he goes in, he's right there, and then our IT guy is right behind him, going in and checking. Okay, I can see where you've been and what you've been sending. I mean, you did it. There's no way around it.
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody has an assigned laptop. They have their own. It's assigned to them. They have a number. They don't borrow them. We're fortunate enough to have everybody has their own device.
Yeah, 1-to-1. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's being proactive. That's knowing that we're not going to wait till it happens and then sit around and scratch our head or other parts of our body trying to figure out what to do. They know if you've got technology, you better have a dedicated policeman and an IT person. They know that. That's their job to do those things. That's wonderful. Macy talked about endangering or interfering with proper authorities. That's you know, holding information back, not doing the right thing. That's written into their policy. Now Melissa hit something that we're going to talk about a little further down the road when she talked about working with your teachers to make sure that A, they're coding infractions properly and don't just unload the kitchen sink on a kid, and B, that they don't do it when they're emotionally involved to where they have not only escalated the situation, but escalated the write-up as well. One of the things that teachers need to understand, and we'll talk about this when we do discipline, I would have teachers say, well, he's done 17 things this week. Well, why'd you let him do 7? We can only punish him for the one thing. You can't just add them all together. That would be capricious. If he came in tardy, we'll punish him for that, but don't add disrespectful and disruptive, and don't go back to the 17 other things that he's done for the last month and put it on his referral. Can't do that. And so you got to work with your teachers to make sure that you get the appropriate joke, so that we don't end up being arbitrary. We let Johnny get away with it, but not Susie, or capricious. We add 17 things that he's done so that he gets more punishment than the incident he was in, or that we punish him in the room. We give him a 0 and refer him, that kind of stuff. That'd be double jeopardy. Now, let's see. Olivia, I think she's tomorrow night's group. She said it's not unusual, and I'm glad we got Melissa, the expert, here tonight. I wanted to ask Melissa this. She says it's not unusual in her school for high school kids to attend their IEP meeting by themselves and the parents not be there. Talk to us about that for a minute. If they're under 18 and over 18, Melissa, what's the rules on that? Do you continue with the meeting?
That one, I don't know if I know very well, but I know 13 and plus, they can be present there, but they still have to be present with the parent or guide. I know we've had situations where 17-year-olds, but they still have to have their parent in with them. And for 18, I think they have to sign their FERPA that says, whether or not their parent can be present with them.
Right. And so for high school kids, they're not all the same. The ones that are 18 or above can be there, and you can conduct the meeting. For 17 or below, you need parent consent in order to do that. The kid just can't come up and say, my parents couldn't come today. Well, you're not sure they even knew. So you got to be careful with that one about kids representing themselves at an IEP meeting. But Melissa is right. If a kid's 18, then you have to FERPA his parents in, because he's an adult and they don't all have automatic standing. He has to extend that to them so that they can attend the meeting. But if he's under 17, you have to have their permission to conduct the meeting without them being present for a high school kid. I'd be real careful with that one. I don't like doing that. I think that can get you in trouble down the road. The same people told you it was okay are the ones that sue you. So you got to be careful about those high school kids. And then the last thing on that one is Nicole shared with us the concern that a couple of the assistant principals didn't understand or didn't know intervention, three-tier technology, technology or language. I have a lot of thoughts on that, but we have a long night tonight, so I'm just going to say your job is to know stuff as a school administrator. If you don't know the language, then you don't know the law and you don't know the policies. It doesn't take many times of being the village idiot, and then people will lose complete faith in your ability to lead. And so if you've got a program, you better know that program. That's a good one on that. And then the last thing I have tonight is Keisha is working ahead. Is Keisha with us on the screen? No, I don't believe I see Keisha on the screen. There she is. Oh, y'all keep moving around on me. Keisha was talking about the activity number 6. I want to caution you. You're not a medical doctor. I'm talking about all of us. I'm talking about all of us now. We're not medical doctors. So when a bus rear ends an activity, when a car rear ends an activity bus and you're the person, the administrator in charge on the bus, 3 things you got to remember. And these are absolutes. First one, if you're able, you call 911 immediately. Then you try to give aid or comfort, or you try to make sure that you're out, do whatever you can to secure the location. You're not a medical doctor. You can be sued for giving medical attention that went bad, so you got to be careful on that, but you do what you can, but you got to call 911 first to get don't delay. Don't call the bus garage. I don't care if you think it's just minor. Don't call the bus garage. Call 911. Then call the bus garage, and then, you know, check on the students. And then third, don't talk to anybody. Especially don't talk to parents. Don't talk to anybody. All information for school administrators comes through the public information office in your district. Don't say nobody hurt and then somebody's at the hospital. Don't talk to the media at all. School administrators never talk to the media. We never let them on campus without permission from your public information office. Let me say that again. We do not even allow media on your campus, much less speak to them without written permission from the public information office. And when you speak to the media, they will tell you what you can and cannot say. You definitely don't tell parents. You don't be calling parents. You don't do any of those things. You call the police first, then you call the bus garage, and they will either call or direct you to call public information. But you can't cause a panic. You can't give false information. You'll get sued over that stuff. You got to be real careful and understand the protocol. 911, aid, and then make sure that you have called the appropriate people, that you don't speak to the media or parents and cause a widespread panic. So those are the things that caught my eye this week. Again, I read all your work. Please remember, there is no, as a reminder, there is no template for the skip nor the cap. I told you at the beginning of the semester, there's just the outline for the OMA, then you have to make your own. I did put a couple of examples in for you under task and prompts for the skip, but I'm not supposed to give you a template for that. You're supposed to start learning to develop your own. That's another skill set. That's more of that pulling back and you stepping forward. A lot of times in the central office, they'll give you a template for the things they want, like your school improvement plan or that thing. Many times they'll ask you for a report and they won't give you a template. It would not be wise to get in the habit of calling the central office people and asking for a template for a report they ask you for. Again, that people don't have much confidence in you if you can't do things like that. With all the stuff that's out there and available now, you should be able to create a template, no problem. All right. Our task for this week was case study 1, will cheating strike Bobby out. You were to look at it through the lens of state law, which is the principal grades and classify, so you make the final decision, and the 4 ethical lenses: care, justice, critique, and profession. And we'll talk about that more later. All right. Who's going to volunteer to go first and share your screen and get us rolling tonight? I'm only 2 minutes late, so we're at 1 minute. That's a win already. Who's going? Let's go. Becca, is your group ready?
We're ready.
All right, share your screen. Whoever's got their presentation, let's go.
All right.
All right,
Rich,
Michelle.
got it.
I've got my pad ready to take notes. I'll
No,
try to
hold on.
control myself, but I never know.
Okay.
All right.
So this is our team members. So just an overview of the case. The important takeaways, like important things to keep in mind. The student has copied his brother's assignment from years ago and turned it in. He admitted it to the teacher that he plagiarized the assignment because he was bogged down with extracurricular activities that interfered with his work. Things about the teacher. She discovered that the student cheated and she confronted the student. She made a final decision to fail the student, and she wanted the student to be disciplined according to the school handbook policy. Laws and things to consider. Sorry.
All right.
With everything in mind that Michelle.
How did she decide to fail him in terms of the mechanics of that? How much did she count this assignment?
It was more than 50%.
Of the
She
final
counted it
grade?
as a project.
Go ahead.
But even
Nicole.
if it were a
She
project,
counted it as a
even if it were counted as a project, what's the limit that a project could count?
30%. So
There
it
you
cannot
go.
count over 50% of the grade. It was more than his final total grade.
That's what I
So
mean.
that would be what we consider. You
So
did too much.
again, that would be capricious under the law.
Mhm.
She broke the law. The law says that all assignments for the year can't count more than 20%. Actually 20, I believe. I might be wrong. I know it's not more. It's assignments and the coursework rotate between 20 and 30 according to what your district adopts, but it can't count more than 30. Most districts it counts 20, but it can't count more than 30. All the assignments for the year can't count more than 30. All homework can't count more than 10. All of out of class assignments can't count. So it doesn't matter which you say. You could argue me down as to what you think it is, but it can't count. It's somewhere between 10 and 30. She counted it more than half. That would be a violation of state law.
Okay, Nicole?
So there's certain laws that we must consider here. First, specifically the role of the principal. It is the principal's job to discipline the students. It is not the teacher's job. Whenever he is disciplining the students, he has to determine. I'm sorry, guys. If the reasonable, and again, he may be able to discipline the student. According to our text, there are other things that we should consider when a student is referred to the administrator. In this case, how severe was the offense?
Wait a minute. Before we move off on that one, you've only got half of it. Okay. He has the
We've got more coming.
You got one coming on
He
grade
has authority as well to assign to a teacher. He has authority to assign discipline to a teacher, but he did not. Yes.
Where's 288A?
288A is on another slide, if I'm not mistaken. 288A. The principal shall have the authority to exercise discipline over the pupils of the school under policies adopted by the local board or education.
No, A. Grade
A.
and classify. That's where it starts. You have to start with that one. That's why they're in order.
Grade and classify. The principal shall have the authority to grade and classify pupils and determine the appropriate grade for a pupil who is already attending public school. He should consider the pupil's classroom work and grades.
All right, so it's the principal's responsibility to decide the final grade, and good point here. It's his to decide what punishment goes. Neither one of those is in the purview of the teacher. And the teacher did both of those. She doesn't have any lawful means to do either of those, and she attempted both. And she broke the law on the manipulation of the weighting of the grade. So that's why I said this is not a principal problem. This is not a superintendent. This is a teacher assuming more authority and breaking laws to get what she wants. And so we have to start with 288A, and then we go to 288E, and then we continue. So very good. Keep going.
Michelle, for everyone to see, can you go to share screen? Can you go back and go to share screen? Because I'm not sure.
I can still see share screen.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
All right.
What can't you see?
I was saying, can you share? The slides on the side. If you do the share screen, it'll just do the slides. Make sense?
She wants you to put in presenter mode.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Presenter mode. Yes.
All the way to your right, if you go up to the top, it says present beside comments. Go to your right.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's a new
You're
computer,
good.
so I'm
You're
getting
good.
used to it. Okay. All right.
We weren't done with the bottom part from the text yet.
Okay, sorry.
Our textbook tells us that we need to determine how severe the offense was. That one applies here. Age and abilities. There were none mentioned in the case study, and no past offenses were mentioned as well. And that takes us into, does the punishment truly fit the crime? Shaquita?
So this is where we started. Like this was the bottom line. What we figured out was that the zero tolerance policy is what was enforced on this student. Like there was no due process or anything given. We just went strictly to put that student out. So doing a little research on the zero tolerance policy from the text, we found out that it was formed around the Gun-Free Schools Act of 1994. But that policy focused mostly on drugs and violence, but not academics.
Right.
So when we're talking about this case study, this one focuses on academics. So we should not even be considering this policy. Because again, the text tells us if the policy does not threaten safety, then it is best for us to determine what the best consequence is going to be based on long-term effects. Like if we put this kid out, is he going to go stand on the corner with his friends because they're cool and they're all selling drugs, and then he gets arrested and now he's in prison, all because he all because he plagiarized his brother's paper? So that was excessive. So we thought that, of course, the teacher violated that policy. And of course, the principal has the right to go in and exercise his professional judgment to determine what the best action, of course, should be for the teacher as well as for the student.
I like that slide. That's very good. Very good.
We noted
This is
that
an academic issue. I mean, this has not got anything to do with drugs or guns or school safety or any of that. And you're going to put a kid out for a whole year.
and when we looked at the policy, the wording on it, it had in their school board, it was the school handbook or
Code
the
of
school board.
conduct.
Yeah, it had used the words may and not, it
Yeah.
wasn't specific to this is
Yeah.
supposed to happen. It said
Yeah,
this
but
may
that,
happen.
but even that may is you may give them a failing grade on the assignment only, not for the year. It doesn't extend to that because that would automatically violate zero tolerance, and that would be illegal to write a policy like that. So that's why it says may. But you have to understand, it's understood that we're talking about on that assignment, not for the year. It can't mean that. Legally, it can't mean that if you do something, you can fail for the year. No, you fail the assignment. But then you have to pick, are we going to give him an academic punishment or a disciplinary punishment? And you can't do both of them. You can't give him a zero and put him in school suspension. You can do one or the other, but you can't do both because that'd be double jeopardy. You'd be punishing him twice. That would be capricious. Too much punishment for the crime. You pick one or the other. It's never smart this is an academic issue. It's never smart to give disciplinary, to punish a kid academically when you could simply use the code of conduct and give him a day ISS and let him make the assignment up. If it was an important enough assignment for him to do, then you ought to have him do the assignment. Unfortunately, this is the tricks of the trade that we use to get kids that aggravate us or that we don't like or who are non-compliant. We bend and trick and trade and do stuff like this. This one's very clear in terms of this one is over the top. But don't think stuff as insignificant as this doesn't happen every day. Every day.
So coming off of that conversation, we looked at the 4 paradigms of ethics. Hold on, my child needs another popsicle. Here, take this. I had it ready though. So looking at which of these came into question, well, they all did. And so as a team, we just kind of highlighted a few and then some posing questions. So with justice, like what are our processes that, are in place in order to make sure things are equitable? What are we doing? At the bottom question, what could a school executive have done to prevent some of these things? Where are those conversations in place with the staff handbook to know that the executive, the principal, has the decision to make what this teacher did so casually without any conversation. So is that fair and equitable? Of course not. There was no due process like we just talked about in that last slide, which then brings us to, you know, an arbitrary, because how do we know, was he the only one that ever plagiarized in school? I'm sure he wasn't.
No.
And then with that fact, was anybody else punished like that? I'm sure they weren't. So why this kid? Why now? Why this case? And then y'all highlighted on, you know, that capricious highlights there where he then is punished also through, you know, baseball. And so he's losing out on that opportunity that he had, might have been his greatest opportunity to, you know, achieve and keep him in the straight and narrow. And now that's gone. So multiple punishments are coming into place for something that he did, and he owned it up to it, which is great. But a lot of things the principal needs to think about, that if these processes were in place ahead of time, then this issue may never have come to, we might not be in this situation we're in now. Same thing with care, you know, how are we collaborating? How is, you know, how are we looking at this as a shared decision? Where is that collaboration in the decision-making process with the teacher, with the parent, with the assistant principal, with the dean of students? So how are we looking at our how we're disciplining in a just way? Critique, you know, who is really making these laws or putting these rules into place? In this case, the teacher did, but the teacher doesn't, we know the teacher doesn't have the power to do that. So why was the teacher given this power to then take away, which violates this child's human rights? And then the fourth one, looking at our profession, and we all, you know, really have our own code of ethics, and asking ourselves, does this align with our personal ethics? The student and his accountability, you know, the student had some accountability, but what accountability do we have on the teacher that, you know, overstepped, and looking at that unethical behavior. And then really the best interest of the child was forgotten in this case. So really violating that professional paradigm.
Okay, so we are kind of going to brief the principal's course of action, and then we're going to elaborate a little bit more on that. So the student, for one, needed to have due process. And within the case, at no point was the child interviewed by the principal to find out what exactly, you know, happened and that sort of thing. It was just all taken care of by the teacher. We also discussed how the teacher possibly could have an administrative consequence with the principal and dean of students to discuss the process for reporting plagiarism and the subsequent consequences for plagiarism, because the general statutes said that the principal is teachers report to principals and principals report to the superintendent. The teacher did not report to the principal in this case.
Okay, there we go. All right, so the next thing that we're going to get into is the different types of due process. And the first one that we talked about was procedural. And of course, we know that procedural, oh Lord, where's my phone? All right. Procedure requires that the policies and the rules and the regulations, are carried out in a fair manner. Just want to make sure that the punishment that the student is receiving actually fits the crime. Of course, we know he was given a type of punishment. However, we didn't feel like that it granted, or the student was not granted an explanation of the evidence, either whether it was oral, whether or not it was a written notice, or an opportunity to present his side in the actual case. He was not given an oral notice from his administration. And then we also talked about how this hurt his 14th Amendment, where he was violated because he was deprived of a hearing before a decision was made about about his education. And then the next one that Macy will discuss is, so we have the next slide. Michelle, is it up? There we go.
Very good.
All right, so the second way of due process that we talked about was the substantive. And when we look at that, that requires that the rules and policies be fair. So when we looked at this case, the teacher violated federal laws when referencing the school handbook as it pertained to the cheating case in the zero tolerance policy. So, the Fifth Amendment. So when we look at the Fifth Amendment, it protects individuals against double jeopardy, and then it guarantees the due process. So the double jeopardy would be with him getting punished academically and behavioral. And then when we look at the 14th Amendment to back that up, it is the Equal Protection Clause, which means that the idea that a governmental body may not deny people equal protection of its governing laws. I'm sorry, y'all, my dog is blind. And then when we go into our final decision,
I'm sorry, I was muted. As a group, we decided that the final decision should be, because the project seemed like it counted for a significant portion, we wanted to give him an opportunity to be able to redo the project. But we also wanted him to understand that there are consequences behind these actions, such as plagiarism, because when you go off to college, they also have their own sets of rules and regulations, but it's not a one and done thing. So we thought that if he served ISS, that would give him an opportunity to be able to work on the project. He's still in school. It decreases his likelihood of cheating. And if he needs help, his teachers are still there to be able to help him.
All righty.
Dr. Lamb, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. All right. Don't forget, this case starts with 115C288A, principal grade and classify students, and then principal discipline students. So that means that if there's an infraction of the code of conduct, which stems from the state manual says these are the things we don't allow in schools because we give you money. We don't tell you what punishment to give, but these are the things, and one of them is cheating. Go to your code of conduct, and it has that the most you can give a kid and for cheating is, you can either give him a 0 or you can give him 1 day ISS, and he would make up the work in ISS. That is exactly right. And so the teacher's role in this was simply to write a referral, not to, go from 0 to 1,000,000. And do all the things, violate all kind of federal law, state law, board policies. I mean, she's got a laundry list of things that she can do. Now, let's not stray here from the notion that it's a mistake to think if teachers know better, they'll do better. You have a required work day at the beginning of every school year. And I always did that even at mid-year when I was a high school principal, because we were on a semester deal. What are you supposed to do as a principal during that required work day? What is required? You have to cover the staff handbook and remind them of all the rules. You remind them of the grading policy of the district. You remind them of they must write referrals. You remind them of their duty. Here's the duty roster. Here's the supervision schedule. You reveal the master schedule. You need to be in your room, not in the lounge, and have your teacher assistant covering when the bell rings. You remind them of everything that we covered in the OMA this semester. You basically set that in front of them and say, here's how this place works. And I would do it mid-year again if I was in a semester school, and especially as much as faculty turns over now. You are required as a principal to do that. It has to have your grading policy and grading scale in it. But that's what that required work day is for. It's not just tell teachers they can go work in a room and go out to know. You're supposed to cover all these rules with them. And it's a fool's errand to think that just because you told them that they'll do it, you now have to enforce these rules and check to make sure that they're doing those with fidelity checks. So you make sure that that's what that required day is for. This is kind of not relevant to this case, but one of the things that I see often in cases like this is what we used to call an ABC. Now I think they call them therapeutic suspensions. ABC used to be absence before conference, where folks would not go through the legitimate process of suspending a kid from school and doing the paperwork and putting it in power school. They'd tell the kid, they'd send him home and say, you can't come back till your mama comes with you. ABC, absence before conference. That's illegal, folks. Or we're sending him home. You can come pick him up, but we're not putting it in. No. What that means is you're skipping due process. Not only are you skipping putting it in, you're skipping due process on that. And they say, but I was trying to do it. No, you're just helping your numbers. You're just cheating on your numbers. But the problem with that is you're not doing due process. Any of those little tricks of the trade, don't do them. There is no such thing as ABC. There's no such thing as therapeutic suspension. Well, I was trying to do the kid a favor. No, you weren't. You were just helping your numbers. And you weren't. And the problem with that is you skipped due process when you didn't follow through and do all the things you were supposed to do and handle the incident as a discipline referral. The reason why we have the referral, that starts due process. Let me say that again. The referral is the most important part. That's why you have to work with teachers on making sure it's just the facts, ma'am, on that referral and not everything that he's ever done, or that you making really pejorative statement that he's an awful student or comes from a bad family or any of that. That discipline referral, when you go to court, when you go before the board on appeal, and when you go to court, the first thing that it starts with is that written referral from the teacher. That starts due process. So you have to tell them, don't be putting your opinion on here. What a terrible kid he is or bad family. No, we want just the facts. And you can't escalate to something greater than it actually is, because we're going to take witness statements. You've got to prepare your teachers to write written referrals. But that is the heart of due process, is that written referral, that first referral. There wasn't one in this case. That was where that's when it went off the mark. All right. As a group, what would y'all do with this teacher? If you were the principal and you had a teacher that did all this bad stuff, what would you do? Hard to keep teachers, hard to get teachers.
Definitely have to have a conference.
You're breaking up.
Yes.
Did anybody hear what she said?
If it were one of my teachers and I was in a principal role. Hear me okay? No? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear
my
you
husband
now.
No. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My husband works full-time from home. So yeah. Okay. If it were one of my teachers, I would have a conference to remind them of their duties and my duties. We go over the referral process and for them to discuss with me any decisions before making classroom decisions about a child's future. Because again, they are a teacher. Everyone has their role, and I would be polite about it, but just a gentle reminder that you cannot take that role on when it is not yours. So for me, I would definitely sit down and have a conference. I wouldn't take it any farther right now than a conference.
We could also show her the law of the role of the teacher in the North Carolina statutes, because it does state about their role to report.
Okay. Becca, what are you thinking?
I would have said the same thing. Bring him in for an administrative conference, sit down also with the dean of students, make sure that there's additional training for the teachers. Like you just said, I didn't think about that, but to have a mid-year review of the handbook, because we do that. I'm working on that right now in summer, been the last 2 days, and you're right, we talk about that. And even my principal, even with some of the teachers that are there, we breeze through some things that does not need to be breezed through.
Exactly.
Even veteran teachers that were there, we breeze through these different things that like, oh, everyone knows, but yeah, I do, but I still need to hear it again. And it's like we're so bent right now on worrying that we're keeping teachers in meetings or keeping them after school, but things like keeping them in these meetings and having these discussions are what's going to save your job. So having that discussion, yeah, it might be, you might want to get out, 20 minutes earlier from work or head and go do something on a nice day, but having that after school meeting or having these things is really important. So I would talk to them. I'd really bring in, like I said, my dean of students, bring my whole instructional team in to talk with that teacher.
Well, you always, by state law, have at least one required work day where they have to be there the full day before the school year starts. That's a state requirement. That's your day. Now, mid-year, most of the time you have a required at least half day mid-year around the semester change. Generally, that one's just a half day. There's your perfect, I'm big on not keeping teachers after school because they really despise that. But that you've got two opportunities, one beginning and one mid-year to do this. And this should be high on your list of things that you need to do with them. All right, Robin, what do you think?
I would do the same thing that my other group members mentioned, having some sort of conference with the individual or the teacher just to be able to express, what she needs to do as far as her rules and procedures and what she did wrong and things so it wouldn't happen again in the future. And then, like they said, I do like the idea of the mid-year conference. We were working on that now when we're trying to plan our schedules for the beginning of the school year. And a mid-year conference was nothing that my principal even mentioned. And with a lot of us veteran teachers that are already in the school, having that mid-year conference will give everybody a refresher of the handbook and what they are required to do and what's actually in there as their rules and responsibilities.
Yeah, you got to do it. Again, just because as Becca said, we get busy. Just because they know better doesn't mean they do better. We got to remind them, even though they might be veterans. All right, Small, you've been waiting. Drop the bomb on me. What would you do, Chiquita?
Oh my goodness. I really don't think I really want this teacher.
Yeah, I don't.
But in the current circumstances where teachers are leaving left and right, I mean, I have to think of the best interest of the child. I need a educated, active body in the classroom that can be worked with. So somebody who knows the policies, but they're just not enforcing them the way that they should. So as my team member said, we need to sit down, we need to have a conference, we need to discuss where it went wrong, you need to know the policies, you need to ask me any questions that you have about the policy so that when you leave, you understand, I understand, so that in the event that this happens again, you understand that you have tied my hands and you will no longer be my teacher. But again, we do need the conference, meet with that staff again, because if that teacher's doing it, who knows? I saw her do it, I'm gonna try it too. So let's go ahead and nip it in the bud. Let's meet with everybody, review those policies, and let's start over fresh.
Would you put her on an action plan?
Yes, I would, because I want to see what she's doing. Because if she's doing that with one student, I mean, and this student's a high profile student. His uncle is a part of the board and he's on the baseball team. So if this kid, and we caught this kid, what kid did we not catch? So I need to see what you're doing. So we need to meet every couple of weeks. I need to make sure that you still understand. I need to see what you're doing, those grades, what's going on in your classroom. I need to compare your discipline logs to your academics. I need to see what's happening.
Yeah. Well, the least I would do is action plan, just me. But unless I was just, so desperate that I couldn't do anything else, I'd fire her. I mean, I'd have to be in awfully bad shape not to fire her.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've been in a bad situation before. I told you, I walked in, I had 37 vacancies. I had kids in the auditorium, people watching them. I mean, but I still found one in a bar in Pineville and fired him in the bar. Certain things you just can't do. You have to have some standards in your building. I found out where he hung out. He'd left school and left kids unattended. And I went down to Pineville, found him sitting drinking in the bar, and I fired him in the bar. You can't leave your kids endangered. You can't do those kinds of things. Now, did I want to do that? No. Did that put me in a bad, oh boy. But we had to understand at that school that there were consequences for not doing your job or for bad behavior. I see Macy's back with us, or trying to get back with us. She fell off there a minute. But I'm just telling you, I mean, there's certain things that's just a bridge too far. No matter how short-staffed you are, there's just certain things that are a bridge too far. You can't allow. You just can't. But Shakita's right. I mean, what are other people doing? If she gets away with this and she comes out of this unscathed, you know, what are we doing to the kids that don't have an advocate that nobody does care about? It's, you know, and don't be naive and think because people work in the business that they love kids. That's a mistake. That they'll do the right thing by kids. That's a mistake. All of you, I'm sure, have war stories. No kids in this group. Y'all have been around a minute. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You know teachers that do bad things, and you wonder why in the world they in this business. They seem to hate kids. That's what we're talking about here, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse with untrained people. It's only going to get worse. It's a good job. It's a good job. Federal law violated, state law, multiples, local board policies, no due process. This one is, again, the principal did exactly what he was supposed to do. He contacted the superintendent. It's one of those that you would contact the superintendent. Superintendent did exactly what he did. Be careful, it's a political situation, but did not tell him what to do because under the law, the superintendent can't. You know, I would make sure that I utilize that required work day properly. That would be the legal day, and then that half day at mid-year would be the legal seminar follow-up, the refresher course on these kinds of things. It's that important. This is the heart of running your school. All right, who's our next group? Great job, excellent. Who's our next group? Who's going to share their screen and go next? Sparkle?
Yes, I don't have
Who's got y'all's?
Mandy.
Mandy, you ready? Let's go.
All right. We started off with the case summary, of course, and we definitely highlighted the fact that it's looking at the ethical considerations and also the pressures of the various stakeholders, and the parents and officials and all of that are components of it. And to make sure that the school academic integrity and the student morale and all that is focused on. We highlighted and talked about basically what went wrong. Firstly, there was a lack of clear communication and established protocols. There's not an exact protocol that's actually defined within the case study for handling cheating and leading to the inconsistent responses of the school staff. So that has to be clearly defined as the school, and then that makes the handling of the cheating to be consistent throughout the entire building. The teacher and administration face the pressures of the stakeholders and the community, which influence their decision making. And lastly, the case highlights the challenges in balancing fairness, disciplinary action, and maintaining academic integrity. And we also focused on the fact that the project was more than half and should have been no more than 30%.
I want to circle back to that when we finish. Remind me of that. Made myself a note.
So for due process, we've got two different types of due process for substantive and procedural. Was substantive procedures followed? And the answer is no, that there was not. There was not a good enough reason for the deprivation of school and or athletics. Was the procedural due process followed? And the answer is no on that one also. There was no written referral in the first place. And that because there was no written referral, that the principal, had there been a referral, then the principal would have known about the situation before the dean of students, but unfortunately that did not happen. I pulled from my own board policies. If a student is up for suspension, then the administrator is supposed to conference. That is supposed to be the hearing for a fair and impartial hearing, even if it's just a conversation with that particular student, which did not happen. They are to notify them of the charges against them. If the student denies responsibility, then the evidence is supposed to be provided, and the student is supposed to have the opportunity to present their side of the story, which also did not happen. In my district, and I assume in other districts as well, cheating is a level 1 offense and should have been handled through only one of the following situations: an administrative conference, a parent conference, a referral to counseling, removal from class, detention, ISS, or possible OSS, but not any combination of any of those. The case doesn't merit expulsion in any way, nor does it lend itself to be removed from the student's current placement. The honor code defined my district is defined as the expectation of the student to demonstrate integrity and individual responsibility, personally and academically, and to maintain a fair and honest environment. And although the student may have been cheating, again, no written referral was provided, and so therefore due process was not followed in any way.
Could you give a kid the maximum penalty, like out of school suspension for a nonviolent offense?
Well, this comes straight from the board policies. I think it's for principal discretion at the end of the day, but it does say or possible OSS.
Yeah, it says possible. That would mean there'd have to be extenuating or multiple cases when it says possible. So at the end, unless there's something else extenuating, and according to this case, there isn't, the out of school would be off the table. And so one of the things that's under that capricious standard for the law, you have to be careful as an AP or a principal that you don't go to the maximum without there being extenuating circumstances, is my point here. And even though it says possible, but you would have to be able to argue, unfortunately, maybe in a court of law, why you went to the maximum on a nonviolent first offense.
Yes, and then
and that would not go well. That conversation with the judge would not go well for you, by the way.
Correct. Yes, I
And
totally
so,
agree.
yes,
Again,
I mean, you presented it correctly, but I'm just talking about thinking about this along the way here as we're learning, going through this stuff. You try to avoid the minimum and the maximums if you can, because neither one of them it's hard to justify when you go to court. Kid does something and you give him the minimum and don't really pay it any attention, just, go back to the room, and he does something much worse, and they find out that you didn't handle the first case. Uh-oh. And then on the other end, you went to the supermax on the back end, and it's the first time nonviolent offense. Uh-oh. You're a lot safer. I mean, this is the practicality. You're a lot safer trying to avoid the minimum or the maximum when you're doing discipline, because you don't want to be seen as not having done anything, which is like the minimum is a conference. You don't want to be seen as having not done anything if he comes back and does something much worse and somebody gets hurt. Uh-oh. So, yes, there are limits, and we stay within those tiers or those levels, but we add a layer of security for you on either end is what I'm saying. That's just the practicality of doing discipline. Don't try to stay away from the minimum, try to stay away from the maximum. It's a lot easier to defend when you have to go to court. Continue on. Excellent. I'm glad to see you're supposed to go to your handbook and look at this stuff and see what it is. But you're right. This all started with there was no referral. No due process. Couldn't have been. There was no referral.
Yes, sir. And
Excellent.
I'm sorry, who was after me for due process?
It's me. I'm doing arbitrary and capricious. Sorry, I'm just getting over being sick, so my voice keeps going away. But the principal, Tim, he followed all protocols correctly. Negligence came into play with the teacher. Apparently she does not know proper protocol or school's protocol on how to handle certain situations. So Principal Tim, he did reach out to the superintendent like he was supposed to. He just didn't jump into action and took the teacher's side. What was wrong in this situation was that she didn't even discuss with the student, like give him a chance to like say what was going on or just plead his case or anything like that. So no school policies was followed. It was no clear standards set in place for the teacher. So it was just a whole bunch of things that should not have happened. So she was being capricious and arbitrary at the same time because she wanted to give him fail the course. She didn't want him to do a lot of things. So she was punishing him too many times for one offense. So as Melissa stated earlier, also that's how our school is. That is an office managed referral. So it should have been brought to Principal Tim's desk so that he could handle it as well. And that's all I have on my side.
Excellent.
So then we looked at the ethical paradigms related to this case. And one of the first ones we looked at is, was it just failing the project and following school policy would have been the just outcomes, and that was not done in this case. Failing the whole course is not just, it's accounting for more than half, which obviously, as we discussed, should only be more than 30, can't be more than 30%. The punishment does come across as if she is trying to do zero tolerance for cheating, which is not the nature of the zero tolerance policy. And that's part of the problem, is that these were kind of put in places for other offenses and they don't really fit that measurement. The student had a lack of due process, and the teacher's actions really, according to the textbook, cannot shock the conscience as being unreasonable, which these behavior, these consequences really did. And they were done without the knowledge of the principal. So that's what makes them even more unreasonable.
Again, that's what we call the reasonable person standard. When you have to go to court, that's exactly what Melissa just pointed out to you. That shocked the conscience as being unreasonable. That's called the reasonable person standard. Would a reasonable person be shocked by what you did? Yes, that's exactly it. Good job there, Melissa.
So when it came to the care part, I kind of broke down some things that you could share when looking at this. Understanding the student's perspective, responsibility and support, impact on relationships. So also consider the impact of the other students, because was this displayed in front of other students? That's also a thing too. Consequences versus growth. And I kind of shared this at the end, but reflection, but I did a presentation on equitable grading with the staff, and what we saw, like the problems, we did a diagram of our whole district and the kids that were passing, and teachers were giving grades for like, the students were mean to me, 0, versus academic grades and how like the grades compared. And a lot of times we don't think about that of like, are we equitably grading? What are we grading for? Like, why are we grading projects? Does it have anything to do with the content? So that was something too to think about when you think about it.
I'm gonna extend that one, Sparkle. See, you've hit a nerve with me. I love what Sparkle just said. Is it really, we need to have a conversation. I've written this down. I got it right here ready. We need to have a conversation, an ethical conversation about our grading policies. Now, see, I would argue that this shouldn't have counted more than 10% because it was homework. I've always entered into a conversation with teachers about equitable grading. So if you give somebody an out-of-class assignment that can count up to 30%, you're putting a lot of pressure on that kid to have somewhere at home they can work, to have supportive parents. I can tell you right now, when I was an elementary principal, the second year I was an elementary principal, I banned homework, no more. I couldn't even live with 10%. But see, I would argue that this is, if you do this outside of school, that's the definition of homework. Everybody doesn't have the same ability or the same support to do homework, something outside of the school day. I don't think it should count more than 10%, anything. I don't like even the 10%, but in aggregate. But you say, well, it was an out-of-class assignment. Well, that would be the definition of homework. Assignments are things you do at school. Again, getting teachers to buy into that. Don't be sending all this stuff home. That's not equitable treatment of all of our kids. That's not an equitable or an ethical or a humane grading policy. You need to have that conversation with your teachers. What are we really doing here? We're holding the kid accountable for the circumstance that he's growing up in, and he's got nothing to do with that. That's exactly what you're doing when you start counting homework 30% and sending all this stuff home. That's exactly what you're doing. You're holding the kid accountable for things outside of their control. I can live with 10% because the state says it can count that, but I can't go along with sending assignments home and claiming that they're assignments so you can manipulate it up to even 30%. No. If it didn't happen at school, can't count more than 10% for the whole year. If it didn't happen at school, we have to have that understanding. That's what homework means. Don't be playing. Like the pastor said first at the Baptist church where me and my wife got married 40 years ago. We're talking gross, not net here. Don't cheat the Lord when it came to tithing. That's what we're talking about here. He wanted 10% of your gross, not 10% of your net. Don't cheat the Lord. That's what we're talking about here. Don't be cheating these kids over this, counting stuff that you sent home. Oh, that was an assignment. I can count that 30%. No, that's still homework. Let's not play semantics here. This is and don't be sliding them zeros in there on behavior. That's not got anything to do with their academic behavior. That's not academic. That's not representative of their work, of their learning. Don't be sliding them zeros in. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. And we make the mistake again, to be redundant, of thinking if people know better, they'll do better. No, they won't. We have to keep reminding them, what this is about and who we're here for and who we're going to be champions for. This is that champion conversation right here, especially in grading and discipline. Who are you going to be a champion for? Teachers need to be champions for kids as well. All right.
Can I mention on just these same discussions are what have led my school currently to be discussing the 50-0 instead of a 59.0. Because of being fair to the kid and all your other grades being only so many points, and so many teachers trying to throw zeros in there because they're trying to sabotage children.
Yes.
Because of whatever reason. And so our school's currently going through a huge debate on what's fair, what's not fair, what's right. Our county has a policy of nothing below a 40. But our school is having the debate about what should really be a 0 instead of a 0.
Yeah. Well, a lot of sabotage going on right now on kids. I see it. I hear it. I have a lot of doctoral students who are principals that I spend a lot of time with. I actually are in their schools pretty regularly, and I tell you, it's people who have come to the profession, especially who weren't trained or prepared, that this is just a job to them. Boy, they seem to be awful spiteful when it comes to kids. I mean, it's not personal, but they make everything personal. And yes, we're having to have some of these conversations again. That who are we here for? That's unfortunate, but Leanne is exactly right. I'm hearing more and more of that. It's disturbing. It is very disturbing that schools have become very adversarial between the faculties and kids and the parents. That not good places to be. We need to turn the other cheek. We're going to have to get more into that, I'm afraid. All right. Excellent. Thank you for that point, Leanne.
To continue on into critique. In this instance, Bobby cheated on a project. He's not morally corrupt. This is probably not him spiraling down into a life of
Drugs and
crime.
alcohol.
Cheating is not, a gateway offense. But so like this was one incident at one time. I kind of looked at it really from where Ms. Barton had failed in this scenario and situation. First off, this is a flex of power.
Yeah.
And she's trying to justify what she was doing. Unfortunately, as working with teachers, being an instructional coach and an academic facilitator, I'm looking at like, how is he able to cheat on her assignment? If it's worth 50% of this grade, where were the checks for understanding? Where was the gradual release? She should have been really involved in that process if it was going to be worth so much to her grade that she didn't catch this all along up to this point. I mean, even us in this group, we're turning in tasks by sections. So if, one of my tasks was completely plagiarized from the example, that should be caught early on rather than I get to
Yes,
the
see, you're much more eloquently than me explaining why if it happened outside of school, it's homework. It's not an assignment. If it were an assignment, you would be doing fidelity checks all along the way.
Correct.
That's what I'm talking about. In my opinion, it cannot be considered an assignment. There was no guided practice, no gradual release. It was all just independent practice. That's the definition of homework. That's why it can't count more than 10% for the year. It's exactly the point. And thank you for being much more eloquent than me and explaining that.
And then when it came to part where these family relations and the school board, I really felt like this did not play a part.
No, that was just
we knew she was wrong at the get-go. Now, I do have an issue with her doubling down and bringing in the union representative.
Yeah.
Having that, I've never taught up north. I've been a Southern teacher all my teaching career. I know just from what I've heard from people, the weight that the unions can have, but it's a disservice to the scholar when at the end of the day, sorry, that's the airplanes flying in to the Marine base across the street. It's a disservice to the scholars, and I don't think you can justify that in any way, shape, or form. So who his uncle is, what sport he plays, that's not really relevant because the actions of the teacher are what's wrong. Yeah. I think it kind of goes back to things that I tell students all the time and even my own children. If you're in the wrong, I can't help you. If you did the right thing, then I can help you and we can work through a situation. But if you did the wrong thing off the bat, I can't help you. And that's where I feel like this teacher went wrong.
Yeah.
For profession, I think just professional integrity in general, was what you did ethical or even, I think it was stupid. You're right. She would have been on the plane or something anyway, but, accountability, fairness and justice. Was it fair? Was it justice? And I think, Melissa, you said a good point because sometimes we get a lot of that, and I have to talk to my principal about that. When people are on the board, she backs down. No, it doesn't matter. Fair, right is right and right. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the superintendent. You're going to respect me, and the rules are the rules. You're not going to back down because they're on the board. That's even more reason why you want to do your job. And I think professional developments need to be had. Impact on reputation. So one teacher does this, how many other teachers are doing this? So I didn't just think about her, but I'm thinking about as a whole, like who else was doing this in the school. And commitment to excellence, like you need to set a standard. So as a principal, I would have to go back and maybe I do need to go back to our handbook and do a PD on, because how long has this been happening? Who else is doing it? And that's what I have.
All righty.
Oh, and I could just do my takeaways while I'm here. One of the things is we have a matrix, a behavior matrix. We're a PBIS school. And so we have educator handbooks. That's where we write our referrals. And we have minors and majors and things that are major, things that are minor. And we kind of explain, next year, I encourage them to do a better job with explaining because sometimes they get out of hand with putting discipline things that don't even need to be written up. But when I looked at our handbook, a level 1 cheating is a level 1. So we also have, instead of like ISS, we have restorative practice. So they teach you ways of like why these things happen. That's another thing that we're trying to implement in our school, because we're also transitioning to Montessori, and they don't do a lot of behavior. It's more so talking it out and working it. So it's just a different. So it made me think about, like, as a principal, when I become one, like, how clear are my expectations? And I need to do something to make sure that my staff really understand. I need to give them real life scenarios. This is what this means when this happens. So that's what I took away from this case study.
And for me, I think just my biggest takeaway on this was just the fact of what our text tells us. The most commonly accepted element of due process is the fact of the proper notice of the charges and a fair and impartial hearing. And, those things did not take place. So for me, that's my biggest takeaway from this case.
Right. That proper notice of the charges is the referral. And so that's what they said you did. So yes, we didn't have that. So we just went completely off the rails. So that's a good point.
My takeaway from the case study was just knowing the importance of knowing policies, procedures, and letting your staff members know the importance of policies and procedures. So making that notable during staff meetings, having those PDs instead of allowing teachers to leave school early on work days, maybe utilizing that for times to do PDs and bring people in to make sure that we don't have real scenarios like this in our building, in which we actually already do, but some of them go unnoticed because parents don't push back, or depending on what school you're at and you don't have active people in the community, or parents are not active in the schools, like, teachers actually get away with this sort of behavior because nobody's there to advocate for the student.
Exactly.
My takeaway was, as an administrator, how important it is that I know exactly what's going on with the grading of each of my teachers. Because it's our job to know what's going on. And like in previous schools I've worked in, we've actually done this as a grade level where we set our grade books up together so that these kind of things did not occur, and the importance of that, because that way you prevent it. And as the administrator, it comes back to me ultimately, and this teacher should not be allowed to have even got to this point before something had already happened. So
right. Yeah, this one just got completely away. Should not have gotten to this level at all.
I think my takeaway just goes back to what I had mentioned earlier, and then you even picked up on, is just being reasonable.
Yeah.
What makes the most sense. Sometimes sense and reasonable, those things are, hard to come by. But they exist for a reason, and that, I'm a rule follower. So, you got to know what the rules are and follow them through. That's why they're there.
And that's why we hire school administrators to carry out law and policy, period. That's your job. That's what they hired you for. You don't teach students. They hired you to follow law and policy, and to make sure that the people under your charge, the adults, are doing that. And if you're not champions for kids, you'll let them slide. It's just human nature. If you're not champions for kids, and you're working with your friends, you'll let them slide. And that never goes well, ever. That's, that just feeds that adversarial relationship that you have. All right, we have anybody else with a takeaway on this one? We good on this one? All right, stop. Excellent job. Let me stop your share. Now, didn't explore it, but Mandy did say the magic word that I've got to talk about for a minute here, and that's athletics. Anybody here coach at the secondary level, middle school or high school? Brenda does. Chiquita does. Alicia does.
I used to.
Yes.
All right.
Before I moved to elementary.
So if you do it in North or South Carolina, and most specifically, I'll talk about North Carolina. You have the North Carolina High School Athletic Association handbook. I think I've actually even got a copy in our shelf so that you can see that. And you say, what in the world has that got to do with this? Well, I've had folks who argued, well, this is probably the baseball coaches, probably practicing night and day. That's not the case. The number of games, the amount of participation, the number of minutes down to the minutes of practice is determined for all middle and high school, junior high sports in North and South Carolina. You can't practice more than 90 minutes a day. You can't practice on teacher work days. You can't practice on days you're out of school. You can only participate in 2 games a week, all those kinds of things. So now I can't tell you that this, that he was busy with baseball. It wasn't travel ball. Those people, common sense and them are not ever in the same motor vehicle. They're travel ball people. I was in Goldsboro this weekend teaching my doctoral class. Again, it's a policy, ethics, same deal. It's just at the doctoral level. And in the hotel there, and they were all in baseball uniforms, and I talked to one of them in the elevator one of the days that I was there this weekend, and it was travel ball, high school age travel ball, and they were there all weekend. Now, those people are serious. They've got, they look like professional uniforms. They're staying in, what I would consider for a kid that age, expensive hotels. The travel ball, they were there when I got there Friday, and when I left on Sunday, they were still there. I don't know how you expect kids to do their homework or get involved, but that's not school. That's not school. We are very highly regulated on number of games, amount of participation, number of minutes of practice, all that stuff. But now we can't get into that in terms of when parents get their kids involved in travel sports. And so that cannot be factored in, but it's not the coach at the school, because they're highly regulated. There's plenty of time for kids to be able to do stuff outside of for their schoolwork. And again, that also gets back into that homework. That portends that they're not involved in things like that. So just if you don't know about high school athletic association rules, you will get very familiar with them when you get to be a high school administrator, because you might be the one that's making sure that those things are happening, providing supervision and making sure they're not practicing all day on a work day, those kinds of things. All right.
Dr. Lamb, I have something to share with the high school athletics. We had a situation at my high school last year in which a star athlete was not enrolled in the minimum number of classes to qualify for sports.
Right.
So it got past the athletic director and the guidance counselor.
Yeah.
She was in tears, and it happened to be softball. So it was a situation where it wasn't picked up at the beginning of the year. Right. And it got pretty ugly before it was all over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So did the kid get to play?
She did not.
You just described where, let's see. We've got Leanne on here. We'll have Olivia tomorrow night. Frankie Ashton grew up down in Shingle Hall. Same thing, high school senior. They'd used to let them leave early. Wasn't carrying enough credits first half of the year. Didn't used to have 2 semesters in high school back then. I was a baseball coach. Came to me and said, Frankie's not carrying but 3 classes. He's got to be carrying 4 in order to be eligible to play. Now I love Frankie like he was mine, but you can't do that kind of stuff. High school athletics are highly regulated, and extends down to the middle school. So again, you got to know those rules. But again, we can't regulate. Part of my issue is we can't or don't regulate all the outside sports, this travel stuff that all these kids are involved in now. That's another reason why you got to try to avoid homework. While we're reasonable on our end and we have a rule book, they don't for travel ball. And it's nonsensical. I watch kids be involved in it. My next door neighbor, their daughter is 25 years old. I held her in my arms when she came home, the day she came home from the hospital. She is, till this day, the only 2-time North Carolina soccer player of the year. 2 times. Full ride to Virginia. played on the national championship team at Alabama, is now a professional player playing in Europe. She played the winner in Europe. She'll be on the Charlotte professional team, women's team that has started in Charlotte. You know where her home games was when she was, I don't know, maybe she was a junior. So what's that, 14 to 16? 14 to 16-year-olds, you know where she played her? I lived in Cornelius with the rich people at Lake Norman. You know where her home games were? Phoenix, Arizona. She played her home games for the national junior team in Phoenix, Arizona. Her mother and her would fly out every week and be gone for 2 or 3 days so she could play her games. Travel balls makes no sense, folks. I'm just telling you, it's over the top. Now, yeah, money, unbelievable. What parents spend, unbelievable. But they do. And it's more, even though I might not agree, it's another reason why you just, the poor kids don't have the ability to do homework. The wealthy kids don't have the time. Why are we still trying to do homework? I'll never know in our business. It does not fit the modern version of schooling. It just doesn't. That's another one of those things you need to have a conversation with teachers about. All right, we have anybody else tonight? Have we got everybody?
No, we don't. We can go.
I was going to say, we have one more group here. Let's roll it.
All right. So this is just our group. And we're going to start with the principal's course of action and what it should be. And Keisha is first.
To make this quick and simple, the principal's course of action should be to review the staff handbook during pre-planning, review the syllabus and policies before meeting with the student. The principal should also review the criteria of sports eligibility as well as to see if the student has an IEP. Also have a restorative conversation either with the student, the teacher, parents, coach, and as well as the principal. And for example, heavily discuss what occurred and what they could have done differently. And what is your intention from this point forward for the student? So once the principal meets with the student, they can start with a positive comment and then review what happened as to why they are having a meeting to let the student know, the reason why. And then have a reminder that sports is really not like a privilege to participate in, but you must be able to actually, balance your academics and your sports. And don't let that bother you to, don't let sports overtake your academics of failing.
And we actually added a whole lot more to the course of action. We felt like discussing the consequences of the alternatives with the student. The student can either redo the assignment with a deduction or be assigned a new assignment. That way they show what they know. Because, ultimately that's why the assignment was put in place, to see what you know. And definitely include the teachers, the coaches, and get their thoughts, the parents, so that we're all on the same page. Discuss with student ways to advocate for himself or herself as a student athlete if they're struggling with the workload and being the athlete, because that can sometimes be overwhelming, which could have led to the whole reason why he plagiarized that paper. And then the other question one here was, is the student old enough to understand the consequences? Because no age was listed in the case study at all. Then we want to ensure that the coaches are providing students with time for study hall tutoring to ensure they are balancing that, like Keisha said, that work, school, academics, just making sure it's fair across the board. That fairness has to be in place, because like she said, it's not a privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege. So, and lastly on this one is discussing communication efforts between the coaches and teachers in regards to students' daily work. You know, you can do a weekly or monthly check-in, providing the action plan if they have one in place, open lines of communication at all times, and then definitely hold those parents accountable. They should be involved in the action plan. You know, a 5-minute video call or a phone call of this is what's going on. Did you know? And just making sure that everyone is on that same page. Miss Lisa.
And adding on to the principal's course of action, one of the things we discussed was talking about with that restorative conversation, ensuring that everybody understands what plagiarism means, the implications that comes behind it, and the results of plagiarism if it is excessive. A lot of the times our parents and sometimes teachers and students don't really understand the consequences behind plagiarism. When they're having that restorative conversation, ensuring that they review this with the student, what it looks like and how it can hinder them academically from moving forward and developing as a model citizen and a student. And then thinking about how, as Heather said, we can find ways to prevent that plagiarism.
Okay, and we're going to jump into the 4 ethical paradigms.
Okay, so the first one was justice. One of the things that we all knew, that the fairness of the weighted assignment. We knew that the assignment weighting was more than half of the grade. Okay. The fairness of the discipline taken. Looking at the case study, we were able to go in and dive in and see where the ownership lies, what steps should be taken, and making sure that it is equally distributed, making sure that the student understands, like my teammates have said, that the student understands what he has done, and does everybody understand the importance of being fair, and as well discipline, some type of consequence. The student handbook policy simply states cheating of any kind may require a failing grade by the teacher. There again, we have things that we would want to put into place to make sure, because we know that the student is first. Make sure that he is successful. Excuse me, he is successful. But knowing of what accountability is too. How it relates or does not relate to Bobby's case, holding him accountable for his actions, but at the same time hearing him out as to why he submitted someone else's assignment. This could go into another avenue, honestly. Observing things like this, it could go into another conversation where we're able to find out that he's probably dealing with other things that caused him to do that. But a lot of times we don't know if we do not hear the other person out that did it. So listening and being able for him to get it out of what he was saying, why he did it, that is also important.
So, Dr. Lamb, I do want to apologize, first of all, before I say anything, because I honestly thought I was on camera, but I have a new computer and I have to slide this little piece
Yep.
to the
Like me,
side. And
I thought something was wrong with mine when I bought my new.
I was just waving my hand. You didn't acknowledge me. I was like, do he even see me?
Nope. Do now.
So I have the awesome opportunity to discuss care. And so under this, I put down the student's first offense. A lot of times, and I'm talking from a counselor perspective. I'm not a teacher. So I'm a student counselor, and so that's one of the first things that I look for is a pattern. And, in this, I didn't see a pattern. I just saw like this was the first offense and let's go ahead and cut them at the knees. And that was one of the things that stood out for me. Did the student develop a pattern of cheating? And that's when, from that, I saw where a teacher should begin to develop some type of relationship with the child. Again, I'm talking from a counselor perspective, and I always believe in developing a relationship with children because it allows me to understand some things about not only their school life, but some things about their personal life. And then trust between the teacher and the principal. When you look at that, knowing that if I have the full, I guess the full backing, if the principal is going to support me in the decisions that I do make, then as a teacher, I would look forward to that. And then from a principal perspective, I want to be able to trust my teacher enough to say, okay, look, you are in the classroom, you know the student a little bit more than I do. What is something that you would suggest? And then accountability. The student and parent should sign, especially a student athlete. I am a middle school football coach. And so prior to us even getting into the season, we have a teacher, athlete, and coach meeting. And this is the time where we begin to discuss some things that are pertinent, not only on the football field or the basketball court, but some of those things that are pertinent in the classroom. What is your behavior? What are the things that you should be doing prior to coming out here to play football, basketball, baseball, soccer? These are some things that we discuss, and we have them sign this policy saying, okay, we're going to abide by certain rules. Again, sometimes there are things that happen, and some students are caught up in that first offense. We're dealing with children, so we know children are not going to get it right because guess what? Adults don't get it right. So this is one of the things that we do. We stress not only in the classroom, but also as far as athletics is concerned. And then, should the assignment weigh so much? I am with you, Dr. Lamb, and with my other classmates. This was too heavy. It was extremely excessive. I don't like doing homework, but if I have to do homework, I don't want it to be graded so heavy.
Yeah.
Because there's some things that I do well in class, but I don't do so well at home. TV's going, we got other things going on. And in my case, I have a lot of kids who when they go home, they fight for their life.
Yes.
They're getting, the house are getting shot up, or they're out trying to find food. These are the kids that I have. So I understand that when they get home, doing homework is not something that they're looking forward to.
Right.
So then, and then ensure lines of communication with parents in regards to next steps or measures taken with the student. I think everybody should be on the same page. We should all be saying the same thing. And it should actually start from the principal down to the teacher, to the student, to the parent. We should all be saying the same thing. And how do we do that? We keep the lines of communication open. We talk it out. Yep. I think that's about it. Well, I said how to relate to the case. I already talked about maintaining open lines of communication,
Mhm.
checking with the coaches. So we got.
All right, thank you. I mean, your coaches are monitored by your athletic director, and kids should be able to manage school sports. But as I said, this travel stuff, and parents are over the top about that. And that's something that, I guess, that's going a little bit far, but that's one of those things that, those open lines of communication is he's already doing this, after school during the week, and then you got him in travel baseball on the weekend. We have both ends here. Poor kids don't have the opportunity to do homework. Wealthy kids don't have the opportunity, and because their parents are having them involved in everything in the world. And those are the kinds of conversations, critical conversations, that you have to have with people. Now, they won't be reasonable about it. I can tell you that right now, not especially about the travel ball. They will not be reasonable about that. And you'll never convince them that that's not money well spent. Most of them will spend more on travel ball. They could have paid for their kids to go to an Ivy League school for what they spend on that. Or you'll be like the people next door. Of all the kids in the neighborhood, they spent the same amount on the brother. He had to pay to go to school. And every kid in the neighborhood, I mean, Ashlyn is an anomaly. She's the only she's the only person of all that group of kids that will ever make a dime playing professional sports. But it's just so rare. And most of them, none of them got college scholarships in athletics that did all this travel ball. And that's another issue that we have to talk to. But parents are not reasonable about it. I mean, obviously, that's what keeps the lottery in business. People think that they're going to they're going to hit the lottery, and some of them do, but it's rare. But a lot of them, kids miss out on their education along the way. All right, what's next?
So next we discussed the critique portion of the ethical paradigms, and we discussed the power, like who gave the teacher the power to make those decisions? Was she on a power trip, or does she just think that she was the one that can make all those decisions when realistically she should have just started that referral process and she didn't? She just jumped the gun and did what she thought she needed to do, but there is a protocol for a reason. We also discussed human rights and how, overstepping those boundaries, you don't always know what's going on. You've got to ask questions. You can't do your due diligence the right way. And then we also talked about corrupted morals and how grading needs to be consistent across the contents with the PLC teams. That's what they're there for. They're there to help advocate and make sure that the schools are able to have the grading. Like Leanne said earlier in her group, they're in a huge debate with grading. And in my school right now, I have a teacher who felt that giving a student with an IEP a 0 across the board because she didn't like him was appropriate. And I had to go to my principal and fight tooth and nail because he's on my caseload. He's one of my EC students, and I was the one teaching him math. So every time I'd go in, she would 0 out every single one of my grades because she was mad. And it's just, this shows you some teachers are not meant to be in a classroom, like you said earlier. And then constant, go ahead.
Oh, and thinking about how it relates to Bobby's case, we just talked about how Bobby's family's relationship, the baseball team stakeholders shouldn't have an effect on the decisions that were made to correct Bobby's mistake. Consequences that are equal among all. So thinking about having the teacher included in that process, and then making sure that also make sure that it is equitable.
All righty. Anything else?
So this speaks to the profession.
Mhm.
Well, everyone should review the code of conduct and handbook pertaining to grading and plagiarism with parent and student to ensure understanding. I think personally, in terms of school-wide, your PLCs is a good place to actually discuss some of these things. Between principal, teachers, and then find some type of way to provide parents with some type of information. Information should be sent out to the parents, whether it's a robocall or it's a mass email, or personal email. These are some things that should actually happen. We should be able to review the policy at school level and district level. Now, if I may, just to go back a little bit, I think a lot of times what happens with teachers who are not 100% in, they tend to be letter of the law, and there's no in between. Everything is just black and gray and white. But if you put those two colors together, you get a little gray. What I'm saying is that a lot of times we have kids or children who need certain things, because if they don't have it, then they're not successful in school. They're not successful at home. They need something that they can focus on, that they can say, this is mine. And so I just wanted to put that in. That was burning in my spirit.
Yeah, but you just defined grace. I mean, we all need some grace every now and then. And the teachers that go by the letter of the law, that everything's either black or white, they don't have the capacity for grace, for forgiveness, for restorative justice. They don't have that capacity. I don't want them in the building with me. I can just tell you, if I could fire her, I would, because she doesn't have the capacity for grace. Without that, you don't need to be working with kids.
Yeah. All right.
I guess, and last but not least, in reviewing the code of conduct, the handbook, and policy principle, the principal was able to determine the best punishment and provide justification as to why the student was punished. That way to parents and the students. It also allowed the principal to make a choice that would be in the best interest of the child to model ethical behavior, self-awareness, reflective practice, and transparency.
I guess we can go ahead and do takeaway.
Yes.
Okay. I'll start first. So one of the things that I realized in this takeaway with doing this assignment is some things we came up with some different ideas. And I know someone mentioned, grace. And I know someone also mentioned the importance of documenting. I'm so sorry, I don't have my camera on. I have a different computer today. It's been a day. Documenting. That seems to be, I'm starting to observe that seems to be a weakness in a lot of things, especially when it comes to meetings. You have no proof because you didn't document it. And so there was no documentation for the student. One of the things that I think needs to happen, that I think that I'm actually going to mention, is that just like we have PDs, I think our children need to be informed and educated on the importance of being a student athlete. Maybe that's a meeting. Maybe that's a meeting at the beginning of the year if you're interested in sports, where people come in and discuss with the children the importance. If that's a freshman in college, or if that's someone who really knows the game of how to balance it, the pros and the cons because you want to keep it real with them, letting them know, because it does honestly mess with your mental. This I've seen this happen in real life situations, and some of these kids are stressed to the max, you know. So, with that being said, it's a lot of avenues that open, but the main thing that I take away is these children need to be informed as well as their parents. Maybe I need a developmental a class, so to speak, or a question and answer session if my child is really an athlete and want to take this to the next level, what they expect to go through, positive and negative.
Yeah. Well, you know, on the academic side, they're all gifted. If you don't believe it, just ask their mothers. And on the athletic side, they're all future major leaguers. If you don't believe it, just ask their daddies. They're not, parents are generally not reasonable or rational on either end. Sometimes they are. But you don't have a problem with the kids of the rational parents. It's the irrational parents that you have the problem with. That's you know, what you want to say, but you can't, is the problem is your kid's an idiot and it's hereditary. They caught it from you. But parents are not reasonable about either on either end, unfortunately, anymore. But that doesn't mean that we discount them or that we don't meet with them. We need to make sure that we say, we've got this here at school for your child to participate in. This is enough. If you go beyond that, then you risk them not being able to put the time and effort and get the educational outcomes that they're going to need down the road. I hate to quote Charles Barkley, but like he says, you know, it's only 300 NBA players in the world. You know, you got a lot better chance of being a doctor than you do an NBA player. So, I mean, think about the probabilities here. But parents are not, their kids are all going to be the next. And so, but again, schools, for the most part, have it under control. Have it under control. Alicia says her takeaways: we must ensure that we follow procedures and policies. Very good. Her internet's kicking out on her, but we need to, you know, we need to get parents to understand that we're providing this opportunity for your kid to play athletics here. That's about all they can, you know, we'll be reasonable in it. But if you go beyond that, it may not work out so well. I know some places have talked about they don't, if kids play travel ball, they won't have them on the local school team because it's just too much. Not many, because, you know, everybody's just too over the top on things like that. Athletics has lost a complete sense of proportionality in our society. Complete. And those kids present just as big a problem as the kids from, you know, from the disadvantaged, you know, disadvantaged background. Title I, live in poverty. Just as much problem with the kids on the other end, because they never have time for school. School's not important. School doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how you get there. If school doesn't matter and you don't have time, then you don't do well. So that's the end of that. All right. So we meet next week and we cover our content, and we will talk about, go ahead and get started on your next case study, and I'll cover the case study next time. Lisa says we need to make sure we're getting kids proper supports to be successful. And part of that is having time to do your schoolwork and having time to be a kid and not be on the run and tired and overworked all the time because you were involved in something else. So next week, we'll talk about case study 2, our funding case study with the superintendent. We'll talk about that next time. Again, I read all your work. Congratulations to the stars of the week. Everybody seems to be on pace or ahead. I love that. We're doing well. The quality of your work is great, and the quantity is as well. So I'm appreciative of that. I thank you for that. Again, this is our most fun time to do this, but I would implore you to think about the job that some of you are already are in, that you're inspired to. You're working with adults now. And these are the kinds of things that you have to deal with. And this is, if you can't deal with this, if this is not something you want, if you can't deal with conflict, if you can't deal with supervising and having expectations of people, this job's not for you, because it's all about the adults now for the kids, being a champion for them. Give yourself a hand. I will see you all next week. Everybody have a good week. Thank you.
Dr. Lamb, can you stay on for a second?
I can. I'm going to stop my recording.